Right then. So I'm going to go through the things that you're going to get the highest marks for, yeah? Relevant response, that's going to be easy, you're just going to answer the question, we'll talk about that in a minute. Explores and evaluates. When you explore something, you look at more than one point of view. Yeah, so we're going to talk about points of view today, and that might get you in the top band. The next bullet point is the writer's perspective, so we're going to have to consider who Stevenson is writing for in the 1880s, and their religious beliefs will play a big part. And also this idea of the new kind of fiction, the detective story. So Sherlock Holmes is being written at the same time, and there's suddenly a massive growth in this new story that nobody's seen before, the detective story. And the hardest bit for us is going to be to look at the quotations and then find quotations that will fit. Although in theory, they could be in your plan already, I don't know. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now let's start with the locked room mystery. Okay, so a locked room mystery is. Do you ever watch Jonathan Creek?
No.
Okay, the locked room mystery is like a classic of detective stories. So someone dies in a locked room, and no one knows how on earth it could possibly have happened. Yeah, so let's go through some of the ways this is a classic locked room mystery. First, we've got a dead body, who's Hyde, yeah? But Hyde we associate as being a really evil character. But what books has he been reading according to your diagram?
The Bible.
Yeah, which is a surprise. Do you remember the clues in there that actually Hyde's been reading it?
It was open.
Yes. Yeah, it was open, and he'd scratched blasphemies in there. So he'd been writing things against God. So let's think about the writer's point of view here. How is he expecting the Victorian audience, who virtually all go to church, how's he expecting them to react to this kind of anti-God writing that's in this book?
That Hyde's like evil.
Good. Does he deserve to die?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Now here comes the tricky bit, yeah? Hyde is created by Dr. Jekyll. Do you remember why?
Something about seeing what being bad is like.
Yes. So he says in one of his bits that there's a dual nature in man. Every man is divided in two. Yeah, into two parts. So it might be best if I draw that. Start filming, yeah? Okay, so we've got here my fantastic drawing of Jekyll. And then we've got the smaller figure of Hyde. Okay? Now, Hyde is called Hyde for a deliberate reason. He is hiding his evil nature. How does he do that? Well, he kills Sir Danvers Carew, if you remember. And there are also other things that he does, and Stevenson never tells us what they are. He just talks about Hyde being monstrous and seeking pleasures all the time. And whatever these pleasures are, they're so terrible he can't tell his Victorian audience. He expects all these women to suddenly faint. And if you remember when the maid sees Hyde kill Danvers Carew, she faints at the window. Yeah, so the Victorians have got this image of women as being feeble. Well, interestingly, women are also the people at home reading the books, reading the stories. Yeah, so he's writing a story for women, but he can't afford to detail whatever's in there. It could be rape, it could be bestiality, it could be paedophilia, anything. Could be torture. He does actually mention the word torture in there, but he won't give us any details because he's protecting his reader. Hyde hides his evil nature because as soon as he's committed a crime, he can pretend to be Jekyll again. Yeah, and so he literally hides his guilt. So he can never be caught as long as he can always change into Jekyll. Yeah, now if we're thinking about the climax. if they are the same person, what do they want to know? Think of Christianity. Or think of
What
science.
is the devil?
Brilliant.
Something like that.
Okay, so is the devil at work? Yeah, and there are repeated references to the devil all the way through, and also the colour red, which we associate with the devil and evil. So in your essay you're going to talk about the devil imagery, the colour red that keeps coming up again and again. Alright? With me? Okay. We also go back now to this picture and the locked room mystery. In the locked room, the back door where Hyde always entered is being sealed shut and the key has been broken in the lock because Jekyll has tried to stop Hyde getting back in because he doesn't want to become Hyde anymore. Alright? Okay. So, let's now look at science. So science at the time is very worrying to the Victorians. It's worrying because it's providing cures to disease, usually through operation. So they've suddenly learnt how to anaesthetise people, take out their organs, you can get your appendix taken out, whereas before it would have killed you. They're getting close to being able to do caesareans without killing the mother. But there's another side of science, which is the chemical side. And the chemical side equals drugs. My spelling's rubbish. So, all these potions that Jekyll is taking is also a warning to the Victorian readers not to take drugs. So this is a bit like reading, I don't know, The Sun, and you see stories of celebrities who've had their, is this called the septum, where it disappears where they're snorting cocaine? Our media's full of warnings about drug taking. Exactly the same is going on here. And what's interesting is drugs are not illegal. Yeah, so even Queen Victoria is taking laudanum, which I've probably spelled incorrectly, that might be an A, but never mind, which is like a liquid form of heroin. Not quite as strong, but she's taking that to sleep, and loads of women are. There are things called opium dens, where you go in and smoke as much opium as you want. It might knock you out for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and so really respectable citizens are suddenly becoming drug addicts. And in a way that's exactly what happens to Dr. Jekyll. Yeah, his habits become a drug habit. So there's a massive drug problem. And for the Victorian reader, part of the climax is seeing how this is solved. Is he saying that actually all drugs are going to lead to death and you've got to give up taking it? Or has science found a way to control drug use, which is really attractive now? People talk about legalising cannabis, don't they? They're thinking, well, hang on, if we make it legal, can we control it? Can people just use a bit of the drug and be safe, like alcohol? And this is a debate that's going on in this book. That's part of the climax that we're looking at. Right, so we've got drug taking. Let's go back to science. We've also got Darwin and his theory of evolution. And are you familiar with the theory of evolution?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. In simple terms, it was lampooned, that means made fun of, lampooned at the time to say we are all descended from, any idea the animal?
Apes.
Yes, from apes. Yeah, rather than going back further in time, they just said, right, we're just all descended from apes, we're all like monkeys. And Darwin's opponents saw that as ludicrous. But this is why Hyde is described as ape-like. Yeah, so there's this focus on Hyde being like proof that evolution exists, but that evolution is evil. Yeah, so when we've become man, we've evolved away from the ape and we've become good. But Dr. Jekyll's going back to a time when humans were more evil, when they in fact weren't human, they were ape-like. So that's another climax for the Victorian reader, because they're not sure about this debate between science and God. So if we've got a theory of evolution, does that mean the Bible's rubbish? Or does it mean that God created the original celled organisms from which everything evolved? So is evolution part of God's plan? Yeah, and Victorian readers at this time are really confused about this. They don't know. So that again adds to the climax. Okay? For a modern reader, we probably don't have this interest in evolution, but we do have the interest in drugs. That's still a relevant problem for us, isn't it? And so you can afford to put that in your plan. And we also have this idea of whether science is going to ruin everything or make life better. So let's look at Dr. Jekyll. What evidence do we have that science is dangerous? Any ideas? No, Mr. Salles. I'm just going to blow my nose. You can stop recording for this bit because that would be really embarrassing. Yeah. Okay, so science is dangerous. This is proved by the drug taking, and you said the drug taking is done by Jekyll to try to become evil as Hyde, but he creates a new self, this idea that he, Dr. Jekyll, is never responsible for what Hyde does. Yeah, whereas if you do something, well then you get in trouble for it. If I do something, I get in trouble for it. He's got this brilliant idea, well, if I create this other person, Hyde will get in trouble, but of course he never will, because he only has to take the potion, he turns back into Jekyll, no one will ever find him. So I can do whatever I want without getting caught. The problem with that is, it takes over. And this, I suppose, is the horror story genre. Yeah, the idea that we're being taken over by aliens, or attacked by triffids, or we're all becoming apes, like in the Planet of the Apes. This is a classic thing in horror and science fiction. And this idea is Jekyll wakes up one morning and he notices he's got these really hairy hands, again like the ape, like Jekyll. But he went to, like Hyde, he went to bed as Jekyll, but he's becoming Hyde without taking the potion. Yeah? So no potion now, he just becomes Hyde. What's the climax here? What's the reader wanting to know?
Why?
Exactly, yeah, why? And also, can he escape this fate, you know? Is he going to be able to control it, and go back to being Dr. Jekyll, or not? So we read the whole of the end of the novel to find out if Dr. Jekyll survives. However, when do we know he doesn't?
At the end.
Right at the very end. You're probably right. It's not until we get to the end of his letter to Utterson that we find out that he's died. Okay? So that's the climax from loads of different perspectives. We've got science being dangerous. We've got evolution and Christianity. And we've got this idea of whether you can split your personality into two. Right? So I've talked for ages. Now I'm going to get you guys to talk me through using my awesome pictures. Thank you. So, well, it's upside down, isn't it? Anyway, right, no, it doesn't matter. Fire away. Talk me through. Right, talk me through the divide, what this diagram's trying to show about Jekyll and Hyde.
That one is like more ape-like, so therefore more evil.
Good.
Because he's smaller.
Excellent.
because evolution is evil to the Victorians.
Yeah, to many Victorians who see it.
Going against Christianity.
Excellent. Okay. What's the attraction then for Jekyll in this split between the two?
To see what being evil is like.
Yeah, what stops us being evil? What's the main thing that stops us?
Society.
Yeah. Yeah, the social pressures. But Hyde hasn't got any social pressures because he doesn't exist. Nobody knows about him. So it's like a completely blank slate. Why do you think Hyde eventually takes over and starts to appear even without taking a potion?
Because I don't really know.
What's he enjoying?
Being evil.
Yes, the idea of being evil and, crucially, getting away with it. Yeah, there are two things that stop us being evil. One is whether we'll get caught, and two, whether we feel guilty. Why will he never feel guilty?
Because
It's not really him.
Exactly, yeah, he can say it was Hyde. It's not really him. Excellent. Right, then we're looking at the religious view. So, why are they so upset with Darwin at the time?
because that's going against Christianity again.
By saying,
That God doesn't exist, and the story Genesis
yes,
doesn't exist either.
brilliant. Yeah, the story of Genesis suggests that the Earth was made about 6,800 years ago. Yeah, and evolution takes millions of years. And suddenly, science is saying, well, hang on, Genesis can't be right. And we haven't touched on geology as well, the study of how old the Earth is. But scientists at the time are also suddenly starting to realise that these rocks that dinosaur bones are coming from are millions of years old. So Genesis can't be accurate. Okay. Why are people worried about science?
Because people might start to believe them, not the Bible.
Yeah, like in the Victorian age.
Yes.
They're worried that they were going to go against Christianity.
Excellent. Now link it to the drug taking we talked about.
Excuse me.
That's right. Why are drugs such a big deal to the Victorians? Do you remember what I told you about the opium dens?
Because
Well, I'll tell you again, don't worry. Don't worry. So the opium dens, anyone can go in and smoke opium, yeah, and get addicted to it.
Go where?
To an opium den, it's like a hostel, if you like. So it's got beds in there, all crammed in like bunk beds. And people would just go in, take their drug, smoke it, stay there as long as they wanted to be high. Yeah, then they'd crash because they might not have slept for days while they were smoking. There you go. Yeah, and then they'd wake up with the world's worst hangover, I suppose. Yeah, and then go back to...
That was legal, that was allowed.
Yes.
That wasn't just like...
Yeah, so he's writing, Robert Louis Stevenson's writing at a time when this stuff's legal, but everyone realises how dangerous it is. And what makes it even more dangerous is it's not just your working class poor person who's taking drugs. Rich people were taking drugs as well, and they're getting addicted. So there's this idea that no one is safe.
so he's trying to say that science is bad for creating these drugs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's looking through Dr. Jekyll at science creating new drugs, ever more powerful drugs.
Could you also say that the Victorians didn't like it? Because again, they're all Christian, and
Exactly.
God didn't create the drugs for them to abuse.
That's a good argument, isn't it? So they're kind of taking the place of God by doing this. That's a really good argument. Okay. So I think we've covered all the ways that he's trying to build a climax here and who he's writing for. Do you remember what I said about the detective novel? That's the last bit. And the closed room mystery.
Yeah.
Go on then.
That about dead people being in locked rooms.
And so the challenge of reading is therefore,
The mystery.
to work out the mystery. Who done it and how done it? You know, how on earth did it happen? And that's part of the pleasure of reading. Yeah? Okay. So, now that we've done that, what do you need to do to your plan?
Well, I prefer to rewrite it about the notes that we've gone over, because I don't understand any of these.
Okay. I'm happy for you to do that. Do you feel you want to do that as well or not?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, so